Temperature rise will bring widespread devastation and unprecedented extreme weather.
New coronavirus cases emerge across the country.
Obesity rates have more than doubled in kids.
Cape Town is running out of water.
Hello everyone, and welcome to this United World Schools event, which is part of T4's World Education Week. We're very pleased to be involved in this important week for education, and we're going to use the opportunity to highlight a critical aspect of the work we do. After building and running a school and working with a community for 5 to 7 years, we're going to show you how we leave. That is to say, developing quality inclusive education and building the capacity of the community, how sustainability is ensured through the transition of the school to independence within the state sector. We hope you'll find it interesting. My name's Peter Campling and I am the Global Programmes Director here at United World Schools. For those of you who don't know us, we are an international NGO which brings formal education to remote and marginalised communities where it has never before existed. We work in Cambodia, our oldest program and the focus for today's event, in Myanmar, in Nepal, and in Madagascar, our newest program, and from where I am now speaking. United World Schools, our education program, reaches those communities that have historically been excluded from the state sector through remoteness, language, or culture. Every aspect of our work is carried out in partnership with the local community and the local authority. This is critical to the success of our model. By supporting the local authority to extend their reach to a new community, and by training local people in that community to be teachers, we are building a bridge across remoteness, across cultural divide, across different languages. We act as a catalyst, including the excluded. Our focus today, but it's interesting to note that because of our model being so embedded in the local community, our education programs have actually continued through the COVID-19 pandemic in a variety of innovative forms. Today, our focus is transition. 5 to 7 years after a UWS school has opened, full responsibility for the school, including financial support, is handed over to the local community and the local authority. The school becomes a member of the UWS legacy school community, and we continue to have a relationship with it, monitoring progress, provision of online resources, facilitation of school-to-school support, but this is at zero cost to us. In essence, we have gone. Many charities talk about reducing dependency, building sustainability, and having an exit strategy. United World Schools, we actually do this. It's early days, and our approach doesn't come without serious questions, and please do ask them. But we believe we are developing an effective, genuinely sustainable model for introducing formal education to some of the world's poorest, most remote and marginalised communities. It'll be interesting to hear what you think. Please post questions and comments in the chat box, and we will try to answer as many as we can in the Q&A session at the end of this event. We will start showcasing our transition model by focusing on Jongra School in Cambodia. There had never been a school in the Jongra community until the UWS school was built, and over 7 years, the local people, the local authority, and UWS invested a huge amount of time and effort and resources into making the school successful. And then UWS left. Jongra School became one of our first schools to transition. Speakers today will talk about the school and the impact it has had, and they will highlight how transition has worked in practice and share their feelings about the process and the numbers and the school's new status as a member of the UWS legacy school community. We have a great lineup of speakers who will please give us a wave as I introduce you. First, we have Nan Sita, who is our country director in Cambodia. Welcome, Sita. We also have Pisay Soy, who is our communications officer in Cambodia. Welcome, Pisay. And finally, we have Hannah Mae Wilson from the Education Partnership Group, EPG, a non-profit consultancy which supports governments with their education programs. EPG also supported UWS in developing our relationship with the government in Cambodia and our transition program there. So welcome, Hannah Mae, and welcome to you all. So, to begin with, Sita is going to tell us a little about the story of United World Schools in Cambodia and describe our transition model. Over to you, Sita.
Thank you, Peter. Good afternoon from Cambodia, everyone. My name is Sita. I am the country director of United World School Cambodia. I started this project from the first days. So I would like to share with you from the beginning the histories of the projects and how we started and how we ended with really good sustainability. So in 2006, the founder and I working in the government projects. So we encourage girls, more girls into school, and the ethnic minority people, the children into school. So these people, they have their own language. They they have their own customs and live in remote jungle areas, and they suffer really extreme poverty, discrimination, and live in a small marginalized community. So we chose to live closely to these people in order to gain trust and mutual understanding and seek way to support them. So they have no infrastructures, including safe water, supplies, roads, health service, electricity, or they don't have even a school to go to. So they survive. These people, they survive on the subsistence agriculture and jungle forage, and they are cut off from the Khmer majority society and often ridiculed and suffer prejudice sometimes. So since 2000, the jungle region of Cambodia have suffered massive deforestations, so mainly to plant rubber trees instead. So the jungle areas and home of these people, indigenous people, were being destroyed, and alarming rate that leaving them with nothing. So we recognize that the only hope for these people was to provide them with an education, so that they could speak the national language and learn to read, write, and understand number. So we're working closely with the tribal communities and the provincial government. We have chosen to build a school to set up as a model school. And the teachers were from the local, and then we trained them. So in 2008, we built Kong Nok School. That was our first school. So since then, our United World School was born successfully with a lot of happiness from the community. They really appreciate that, and they really give the value to the education, and they really want the children, new generation, to be educated. So since then, we have so far 117 schools with the 15,000 out of school children. This is a big celebrations for United World Schools. So because we work it's so success, and we can't going on, and we have just keep going on and keep developing. So we have in the early day we focus on expansion of UWS through school building in order to reach more children in an area where there is no school. So this was a good goal to have since. And even now, there are many thousand out-of-school children in Cambodia that need United World School to reach or to have. So related to the long sustainability development of the school, we have set up a school transition program that we could transition our school to the government control after 5 or 7 years. So we are able to do this. We had to work in partnership with the local government, community, and especially our good partner education partnerships group, EPG, that have been really supporting us so well. So without them, we are difficult to do this transition program. So let me explain a little bit of the transitions schools. So our close partnership with the government and local community have been very important in pitching the transition process to the relevant stakeholder, because it's involved handing over a lot of responsibility to the communities and the local government. The government then takes over the finance and the management of the schools. And after the transitions, the UWS has much less involvement to the school, which means that the school principal and the school support committee have more responsible to manage the school. So the idea of doing this is because we want all United World schools to be sustainable, running with the government responsibility. So United World School transition schools, so we can continue to build more schools in community where there is no school already. So this means that more children are able to go to school. Also, it take the school independent so that they do not rely on United World School manage them and provide them, with financial support. So if all agreed by both parties, United World School and the government, on transition policies, we then arrange official school transition ceremony for the government to take over the school responsible officially. So recently, we attend a celebration of transition hosted by United World School Jongra School, which was one of the 5 to be transited. So later on, we will showing some footage of the transition ceremony, and you will be able to see for yourself how we establish and confident the teachers and the community member are about what we have built together. So United World School Jongra was opened in 2014, and it was chosen to be one of the first 5 pilot schools in transition program because of the success way they have developed the schools over the years, and the fact that they feel that they are ready for operational independence. So Jongra School is located in Ratchanakiri province in northeast of Cambodia. The school is really remote location, so it takes like 8-9 hours from Phnom Penh, which is the capital of Cambodia. So there are 6 classes in the school, and with 127 students enrollment, and we got 6 teachers there. The school has a good attendance and attainment record reflecting the hard work of the teachers community. So our projects, we have a starting point, and also we have the ending point with really sustainable ability with the government. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Sita. It is great to hear from you, one of the original founders of United World Schools. Thank you for sharing some of your UWS history and your thoughts about the transition process. I hope it's becoming clear the central role of partnerships in this process. Because of the strong relationships we develop, the transition of schools is understood and supported by all. Transition is not done by one group to another group. It is a collective evolution. Everybody is involved. There are no surprises. Transition is a process, not an event. Crucially, this process is further supported and sanctioned by the national government. A memorandum of understanding has been signed between UWS and the national governments of each country we work in. With our programs in Cambodia, Myanmar and Nepal, we didn't have these MOUs in place from the outset, and it has taken some effort to build a relationship with the governments and establish the MOUs retrospectively. At UWS, as well as growing quickly, we are learning quickly. And for our new program in Madagascar, we are ensuring that the national government, the local authorities and the local communities all understand and support the transition process from the very start. But let's get back to transition at the local level in Cambodia and hear from Nim Poliak, who is the head teacher at Jongra Primary School, one of the first UWS schools to be transitioned.
Sala Pathom Saksang, Jongra កាលពីដើមត្រូវបានកសាងឡើងដោយប្រជាជនហើយនិងសហគមន៍ក្នុងភូមិដែលសាលានឹងមានលក្ខណៈមានសភាពទ្រុឌទ្រោមរហូតដល់ឆ្នាំ 2014 ទៅអង្គការសហព័ន្ធសាលារៀនពិភពលោកគាត់ក៏បានមកកសាងជួយឲ្យកសាងសាលាបានពីរខ្នងគឺបតីសិក្សាមួយខ្នងនិងបឋមសិក្សាមួយខ្នងដែលមានចំនួន 4 បន្ទប់ vàដោយមានការគ្រប់គ្រងពីសាលារៀនសហព័ន្ធពិភពលោកគាត់បានគ្រប់គ្រងទៅលើផ្នែកសម្ភារៈបច្ចេកទេសបង្រៀនហើយនឹងបុគ្គលិកបង្រៀនទៅដល់សាលាយើងខ្ញុំធ្វើឲ្យសាលាយើងខ្ញុំនឹងមានគុណភាពក្នុងការបង្រៀនទៅដល់សិស្សហើយចឹងខ្ញុំគណៈកម្មការក៏ខ្ញុំថ្នាក់ផ្នែកដឹកនាំហើយនឹងសហការជាមួយនាយកស្រុកហើយនាយកពិភពលោកគេមកជួយហើយនឹងនាយកសាលាហើយនឹងមេភូមិរបស់ខ្ញុំគឺគេសហការគ្នាបាទខ្ញុំបានជួយជាកម្លាំងហើយដូចថាយើងជួយការងាររចនាសម្ព័ន្ធក្នុងសាលាហ្នឹងគឺជួយធ្វើជួយលើកជួយដឹកនាំជួយកម្លាំងជាធ្វើសាលាហ្នឹងណាហើយគេដឹកមកឈើអីនោះខ្ញុំជួយហៅមកសហគមន៍មកជួយដើម្បីឲ្យបានសម្រេចបានរីកចម្រើនអ្វីដែលធ្វើឲ្យខ្ញុំសប្បាយបំផុតពេលដែលខ្ញុំទៅសាលាខ្ញុំបានជួបជុំមិត្តភ័ក្តិបានស្ដាប់ការលោកគ្រូបង្យល់បានរៀនសូត្ររយៈពេលដែល COVID-19 ខ្ញុំបានរៀនជាក្រុមខ្ញុំបានរៀនសៀវភៅភាសាខ្មែរកណិតជាក្រុមតូចខ្ញុំមានអារម្មណ៍ថាសប្បាយចិត្តដែលខ្ញុំនៅតែបានរៀននិយាយគឺវាច្បាស់ជាងគេហើយពីព្រោះមនុស្សខ្ញុំចូលចិត្តតែចូលរួមគេបាទហើយអ្នកខ្លះគេគណៈកម្មការនេះគេអត់សូវចិត្តចូលរួមនឹងគេហើយគេនិយាយឃើញតែគណៈកម្មការហ្នឹងវាដូចថាវាអត់មានលុយបាក់ធំអីហ្នឹងគេអ្នកខ្លះគេអត់យល់គេអត់ចង់ធ្វើទេហើយខ្ញុំអត់យល់តែអញ្ចឹងទេខ្ញុំយល់ថាអនាគតកូនចៅរបស់យើងហ្នឹងដល់ពេលអញ្ចឹងនាយកគេឃើញខ្ញុំនៅអញ្ចឹងគេយកតែខ្ញុំធ្វើជាប្រធានគណៈកម្មការអារម្មណ៍ចង់ចូលខ្ញុំអារម្មណ៍ដែលឲ្យចូលកូនចៅយើងអនាគតឲ្យចេះអក្សរអនាគតយើងចេះតែមានតម្រេះវិជ្ជាមានអីចេះអក្សរអនាគតទៅយើងអាចមានគំនិតមានអីយើងរលស៊ីរអីយើងចេះអក្សរវាចេះយល់ដឹងច្រើនខ្ញុំយល់ឃើញថាការសហព័ន្ធសាលារៀនពិភពលោកគាត់បានគិតថាសាលារបស់យើងខ្ញុំហ្នឹងគឺមានភាពរឹងមាំមានសមត្ថភាពក្នុងការបង្រៀនឬក៏ផ្ដល់នូវចំណេះដឹងដល់សិស្សគ្រប់គ្រាន់ដូច្នេះហើយបានគាត់ប្រគល់ជូនរដ្ឋវិញបាទក្នុងនាមខ្ញុំជាគណៈគ្រប់គ្រងសាលាចុងរាសូមជូនពរដល់អង្គការសហព័ន្ធសាលារៀនពិភពលោកឲ្យបានឈរជើងជានិរន្តរ៍ក្នុងការជួយដល់សហគមន៍ដែលពុំបានទទួលសេវាអប់រំគ្រប់គ្រាន់សូមឲ្យអង្គការទទួលបានជោគជ័យគ្រប់ភារកិច្ចទាំងអស់អរគុណនៅថ្ងៃអនាគតខ្ញុំចង់ធ្វើជាគ្រូបង្រៀនដើម្បីផ្ដល់ចំណេះវិជ្ជាឲ្យអ្នកភូមិស្រុកឲ្យគេបានចេះដឹងទាំងអស់គ្នា
Thank you to Nim Pauliak and all those who were involved in making that film, and indeed those involved in the transition of Jongra School. I'm now going to introduce our next speaker. Hannah May Wilson is the Director of Strategy and Partnerships at EPG. Hannah May oversees strategic initiatives to support governments in developing effective education policy. Hannah May is passionate about ensuring that all children receive a quality education. She possesses over 12 years experience spanning government, civil society and international consulting, not least, of course, as I mentioned earlier, with her work with UWS in Cambodia. So welcome back, Hannah May.
Thanks so much, Peter. Hi, everyone. So my name's Hannah May. As Peter said, I'm the Director of Strategy and Partnerships at the Education Partnerships Group. And today I'm going to be talking about how UWS have embedded longer term sustainability as a core component of their model. But before that, I will just give a very brief overview of how the Education Partnerships Group, or EPG, came to be involved in supporting UWS in Cambodia with their school transition. So if you could just go to the next slide, Marcus. So as Peter said, EPG is a non-profit consultancy that supports governments in low and middle income countries to shape and strengthen their education systems. Over the years, many of our projects have involved advising ministries of education on collaboration with and regulation of the non-state sector through different types of partnerships. And this is really the reason that UWS and EPG came together to work together. As far back as 2018, United World Schools approached EPG to support them further explore the potential for collaborating with the Ministry of Education in Cambodia to ultimately transition UWS schools into the government education system. So for the first couple of years, we conducted a landscape review of the education sector in Cambodia, together with a scoping study to assess the feasibility of strengthening the existing partnership between the Ministry of Education in Cambodia and UWS, with a longer term transition of the schools as the ultimate objective. And following that study, we've been working closely together with UWS and the Ministry of Education to prepare and execute the pilot of 5 UWS schools to the government, which concluded earlier this year in 2021. And at the heart of the pilot transition and the UWS model is the philosophy of long-term sustainability within the government education system. And so the next slide will take a look at the UWS theory of change and how sustainability is embedded within it. So as you can see, because the UWS approach is grounded in this philosophy of sustainable development as the only option for achieving embedded and lasting change, sustainability is really a key component of the theory of change, as you can see on the screen. And in practice, sustainability means 3 things, as you've heard from the previous speakers. So the first is working in partnership with communities, specifically empowering them in governance, leadership and administration through capacity building programs. The second is really close partnership with local and national governments in all aspects of the school's operations, ensuring that the government contributions to staffing and running costs increase over time as the UWS contributions and support decrease, which leads directly into the third element, which is the agreement that transition of the schools from being built to the time that they are subsumed by the government takes roughly between 5 to 7 years. And I'll talk a little bit more about each of these in the next slides. So if you could go to the next slide. So the first principle of ensuring longer term sustainability really involves empowering local communities to be part of all of the decision-making processes and the ongoing maintenance and management of UWS schools, so that after UWS exit, the communities can continue managing the school locally. And I think that was really well demonstrated in the video that we just saw of Jongra School, where the local community are actually consulted even before the school is built. They are asked to commit their time, both to help construct the school building, but also to take responsibility for the school through participation in the school management committee. UWS then involve local communities in every element of the school's development, really through a comprehensive kind of capacity building and training plan that focuses really on school governance and school administration. And over time, the local community then are supported to take increased responsibility for the school, eventually taking full ownership of the governance when it transitions to the government education system. So if we can go to the next slide. The second principle to ensuring longer term sustainability involves working in partnership with local and national government. And since the first UWS school was built, UWS have sought a formal partnership with the Ministry of Education on all aspects of the model and the planned expansion of schools in Cambodia's most remote communities. UWS really want to make sure that they're not building and running a parallel system to the government, but making a consistent and concerted effort to align with and integrate into the government education system. Both UWS and the Ministry of Education recognise the temporary constraints that the government face in providing access to education for children, particularly living in remote and rural areas. But they share the vision for these schools to ultimately be brought into the government education system to ensure long-term sustainability. So right from beginning of a school's life, the school is registered as a government school. It receives the same financial allocation as government schools, and the government commits to providing a minimum of 2 government-trained teachers at no cost to UWS. And over time, the number of government-trained and appointed teachers then gradually increases until the school transitions to full government ownership. And that usually will take place within 5 to 7 years, which leads me on to the next slide. And this is something that Peter talked about and we saw in the video as well. This is the third principle of sustainability, the kind of 5 steps that you can see here on the screen, which start with the construction of the school and a full portfolio of UWS support to the school, both in terms of additional capacity building support and finances. And it's in year 3 that then this transition process starts to happen gradually. And then there's a flexible window at the end of the process for a couple of years where ongoing training is provided by UWS. And UWS takes a gradual approach to ensuring that all parties have confidence in the long-term success of the school, only handing over full ownership once UWS are confident of the local authorities' capacity to fully support it. So if you could move to the final slide. Just to summarise, I think UWS's approach to long-term sustainability involves the gradual transition of their schools into national education systems, ensuring that these schools are no longer relying on external financing and they can be sustainably resourced by the government. Ultimately, transition places management and financing in the hands of both local governments and communities, which fosters local ownership rather than creating a dependency. And from EPG's perspective, although the terms non-state and public-private partnership, or PPP, are not widely used in the Cambodian context, this partnership really represents a significant departure away from the traditional types of PPP models, which usually focus either on taking some responsibility away from the government or substituting it entirely by creating a system that operates in parallel. And the UWS partnership with the Ministry of Education, Youth and Sports in Cambodia really represents an innovative, sustainable and contextually relevant type of PPP that's been designed in really close consultation with the government at central and provincial levels and with local communities. And so that's what makes this a really special example of a different type of partnership with the government that has at its heart really long-term sustainability. And with that, I'll say thanks and hand back to Peter.
Thank you very much, Hannah May, for sharing your valuable perspective on the transition process. We've described for you so far the intrinsic developmental value of the transition model in overcoming dependency and establishing sustainability. But there's another value to transition, which is also absolutely critical to any NGO like UWS, which has an ambition for dynamic growth. We have over 100 schools in Cambodia, and we're building 20 to 25 schools a year. Schools can cost up to $10,000 a year to run, depending on their size. And it doesn't take a mathematical genius to work out that if we hold on to these schools, we face a huge financial obligation before we have any money left to reach out to new communities that have no school. So we have established a formal transition schedule. In Cambodia, for example, we know that this year 15 schools are transitioning. Next year it will be 20 schools and the year after 25. With this schedule secured, we can make a serious business case and growth plan for the future, which better places us to attract major funding and develop significant partnerships. So not only does transition bring sustainability to the schools, it also brings sustainability to the UWS country programme, enabling them to reach many more remote and marginalised communities and to transform the lives of tens of thousands more out of school children. So I'd like to introduce our next speaker, UWS's Communications Officer in Cambodia, Pisay Soy. Pisay will be talking about how we meet the vital challenge of preparing the transition to be successful. Pisay.
Yes, thank you, Peter. And good morning and good afternoon to our attendees here today. And thank you for attending our live event today. So when we first started to think about transition, it was important for us to make sure that the process of transition was as smooth as possible, and that the school and the community did not suffer as a result. So we worked with Education Partnership Group to prepare our school, and they helped us to develop a training program that took account of what our head teachers and the school would need following on from transitions. Marcus will have the slides on pretty soon. Yes. In the meantime, I will keep going a little bit. Yes, so working with EPG, EPG carried out a survey of the schools to find out what they thought were their trainings needs to be to carry out their transitions. So, and what might be their capacity gap following transitions. The teachers and the community identify numbers of areas, including financial and communication skills, income generations, and the process of writing annual report plan. Yes, next slide, please. UWS designed program based on the result of the survey. So we know that it would probably target the school's own perception of their needs. As a result, UWS deliver trainings in running and controlling budget, keep accurate financial records, communicating with local authorities and community, possible additional resource of revenue and how to achieve them, and the whole process of writing an annual report. So yes, as you can see on the slide, here are some topics that we have delivered to our head teachers and their assistant. Yes, next slide, please. Yes, and this activity would have previously completed entirely either by UWS or with support of UWS. But after transition, it is expected that the school and the community would be doing this independently. So transition require all of us to ensure that school and the community have capacity to do this thing themselves. Building local capacity is key to develop a sustainable program. Without building that capacity right from the start, all we are doing is creating dependence on a charitable sector, not creating program that will be self-sustaining in the future. So that is why also in the training program we provide some training to the ASC, who are the school support committee, who also going to be helping the head teachers out after transition. Yes, and these are the topic that we have been delivered with our pilot school before. Next slide, please. Yes, lesson learned that we have done is that transition has taught UWS that we cannot take sustainable development for granted, and it needs to be built into our program right from the start. So we are now building and opening a new community with eyes on the fact that there will be transition in 5 years' time. Now we have a dedicated team responsible for executing transition, and we have undertaken reviews of our training programs. And for our next actions, after the school are transition, the involvement of UWS is less and will be minimal. So we are having this program called Legacy School Program. which will be the community of resource, and then a supporting network of the transition school. We envisage this becoming an extensive network of individuals and organizations that have undergone the same process and will have to provide mutual support and benefit to each other. The geography landscape of the country in which we are operates means that the school can be inaccessible and therefore isolated. However, with this, our online legacy school program and annual event, we are hoping to bridge the gap between the school and the community so they can support each other and in their own going growth and development. Also on our next actions with our community teachers. So at UWS, one of our activity is to train teachers from the community so that they can work in our schools. They are virtual to our model. They are familiar with local languages, costume, and they enhance the teaching workforce. So we can maintain smaller pupils to the teacher ratios. However, our community teachers have been a particular issue with the transition because they are normally paid by UWS and there is no available in government budget to pay teachers that do not have any government qualifications. UWS is consulting with a regional teacher training college and the Ministry of Education with a few development and no national recognition teaching certificate that is based on practical experience rather than academic achievement. Not only this will enable our community teacher to continue employment after transition. If successful, this is will go a long way to addressing teacher shortage throughout Cambodia. This is an exciting new opportunity that has come out of our transition process and is leading UWS in new and interesting direction. Thank you so much for your time. I hope you have a good afternoon and good morning. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pise. That was really interesting. There are two crises in education that are stopping millions of children around the world getting into schools. One is the shortage of schools themselves, the school buildings, and the other, just as serious, is the shortage of teachers. And as Pise has been describing, our model is very much aimed at overcoming those problems, both of those problems, in a sustainable way. So moving on, we've got a real treat for you now. We're going to see a special performance from Jong Ra that the school has filmed for us. Thank you very much to the children of Jongra School. That was a celebration of transition, and we should use the word celebration because, after all, successful transition means that not only are the children that we have directly been able to provide education for affected, but generations of children after them who we will be not able to contact directly will also have their lives transformed by sustainable education. I'd like to now welcome back to the event our panel, and I'd like to move for the last part of this event to some questions from the audience and give them a chance to answer. There's a couple of questions that have come in already, and we will go on taking more questions, so please do send them in if you have them. And the first question I'd like to ask, I'll put this one to Sita, if I may, and that's, how do we continue to monitor the schools after they've been transitioned?
Thank you again, Peter. Yes, after we transited our school, we have like a 3 times a years of monitoring after we left. So in 1 year we have a team to go back and to see, to check if everything okay, to make sure they are under the management of the government and the community well.
Thank you. And I'm going to ask another question. This one is to Pisay. Pisay, how do we actually choose the schools that are going to be transitioned each year?
Yes, thank you. So once the school is built, when we are choosing those schools, we want to make sure that by the time they are transitioned, they at least will be 5 years old. So between 5 to 7 years old, those schools will be looking at first. And then we are also looking at the management of the whole team at the school, because we every year have this monitoring to make sure that those schools are running real good. And yes, and when they are matching with the age requirements that we have, they will be chosen to be transitioned.
I have to say that there has been an interesting discussion within UWS about this, and it's as we've grown as an organisation, the discussion has slightly shifted. I think initially the idea was we would look for schools that were ready to transition, but I think because of the scale of the operation now, and in a few years' time we will be transitioning up to 100 schools a year, have decided that we really need to put this on a more systematic footing so that we can establish the kind of serious business case that I mentioned earlier. So we are developing our thinking on this all the time. It's a critical question, of course, but increasingly it's becoming when we transition the school, not if. Another question, let's put this one to Hannah May. I know you're not exactly part of the UWS outfit, but you've been working so closely with us for the last 2 or 3 years that you know us very well. What would you say to the question about what would UWS do if the school that has transitioned is not seen to be being successful?
Yeah, thanks, Peter. I think that's a really interesting question. And I think to start with, it's important to emphasize and underscore that this pilot has really been designed as a learning opportunity for both UWS and for the provincial and national governments. And this first cohort of transition schools are going to be monitored very carefully. And there's a lot that's been learned throughout this process of designing and executing the transition. So I think the first thing I would say is that these schools will be monitored very closely, and it will really be in partnership with the provincial government. So education in Cambodia is fairly successfully devolved, especially in comparison to a lot of the countries that I work in, where the provincial government actually have a lot of authority and control over the schools in their local area. And UWS in Cambodia have a really fantastic relationship with the director of the Provincial Office of Education in all of the provinces that they work in, but particularly in Ratnakiri province, which is where these first 5 schools have transitioned. And it's not a case of the schools just transitioning to government and then UWS leave and there's no further conversations and there's no further monitoring that happen. So this will be a very close consultation over time with the government to understand how the schools are doing and where UWS can provide additional support if need be. But the bottom line is that these schools do become government schools. And so ultimately it will be up to the government within the existing infrastructure to ensure that quality is maintained with the resources and the staffing that they have, just as any other government school would be treated within the system. So there'll be no specific special treatment per se, but it's not that UWS is just walking away and washing their hands of the schools. There is a really close relationship with the government, particularly at the provincial level, that will make sure that there is an ongoing conversation to maintain quality and communication.
Thank you very much, Hannah May. And another question for Pisay, perhaps a bit more of a personal question, but you're working very closely with the local communities. How do the teachers and the community members actually feel about transition?
Yes, thank you so much. Really, the community, the teachers and the school support committee are really sad that we are leaving, because they have been part of us and we have really good relationship with each other, almost like a family. So we have a lot of, I would say, emotional moment right there. But at the same time, they really understand that UWS is trying our best to move on to more community, and it's like the help and the love that they would also share with other news community. So yes, even though they are sad, but they are being they are trying their best to be ready and lead the school on themselves.
Thank you. And a final question. This one is for Sita. Given that we now have the transition process embedded in the operation in Cambodia, what are our plans for scale up of the program in the future?
Thank you again, Peter. Our scale-up program, up to we transitions many schools in the area that we already work in the existing areas. We will move to a new area where there's a demand, where there's a need of the help or education that they need, especially more marginalized areas.
Thank you. And finally, there was a question which I'm going to answer, which asks which countries we're going to move into with our program and what are our global plans for growth. And as I said at the beginning, we're really excited to be starting a new program, our 4th program in Madagascar. And the plan is we are doing a pilot to build 5 schools originally in partnership with 2 other organizations. But then we have much more ambitious plans for a program that will last for perhaps 10 years, building 20 schools a year. So that's 200 schools. And we will be enrolling something in the region of 80,000 children who are currently out of school in Madagascar. So that's a really exciting program. And as I said before, right from the start of this program, we're going to learn from the experience in the past, and we're going to ensure that our transition model is embedded, understood and supported by all the different parties right from the outset. I really hope that today's presentations and discussion have been informative and interesting to other people who are perhaps working in the same sector as us. And I hope that our ideas, our our experience and the model we are following has perhaps given you some ideas for your own model and how you can improve the sustainability of it, perhaps even planning your exit strategy right from the start. I'm going to just very quickly conclude with some key points about the transition model in UWS. First of all, partnerships. Absolutely at the heart of our operation is the effective partnerships we create with communities and with local governments. It is through this that we are able to include transition in the process. Secondly, the innovation of sustainability. Sustainability is a word that is used a great deal in development education. But what does it really mean? And for us, it means that we are freeing the community from dependency on the charitable sector. Thus, we are making sure that what we put in place can remain for generation after generation. What it also means to us is that our financial and resource capacity is sustainable, so that the program itself can be repeated and repeated and repeated, and we can reach more and more children who desperately need our help. And the third area, absolutely fundamental to the model, is that of building capacity. And as Pise pointed out earlier, this isn't just about a last sort of stage preparation for the transition to happen. It's actually something that happens right from the start. Even before we've built the school, we are now talking to the communities about transition, about the process that that they will go through. And that process lasts from 5 to 7 years and involves supporting the teachers, supporting the local community, working with the local authority. And the fourth area is empowerment, because transition is safeguarding the future of our schools by putting the ownership in them, the long-term ownership, in the hands of the local communities and the governments. This is an incredibly empowering process. This is strengthening the education system. This is why we celebrate transition and we don't hide away from it. This is such an important part of what we do. And finally, planning with transition as the goal of school development. This isn't just an add-on. This is actually ultimately what we are aiming for: successful transition. We can't claim to have got there yet. We don't have the empirical evidence of years and years of doing this. But as we go forward, we will be learning from this process that we've started, and we will take risks and we will make mistakes, but we will get it better and better, and we will absolutely hold on to the key principle that transition and sustainability is at the heart of what we do, and we really hope that other NGOs will learn from that and be inspired by that. So, finally, thank you to all who have taken part in this event, especially to our panelists, Sita, Hannah May and Pise, to T4 and the World Education Week, and to everyone who has attended this United World Schools event. Good luck to you, whatever you are doing, and long may it last. Thank you.
Join Time Magazine's lead education reporter alongside global educators and advocates to explore the impacts of teaching forgiveness.
I teach forgiveness because it can have a positive impact in my students' families.
It helps my students thrive in the face of adversity.
Students who can forgive are happier.
Join us to hear from teachers and thought leaders on how and why to include forgiveness in your classroom.
temperature rise will bring widespread devastation and unprecedented extreme weather.
New coronavirus cases emerge across the country.
Obesity rates have more than doubled in kids.
Cape Town is running out of water.